Mary, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and your voice in
Oh,
the climate movement. I mean,
thank
seriously,
you.
friend, you have such a powerful way of communicating about climate change and justice. I wanted to just start out. Why do you think forests are so important right now in the struggle for climate justice?
Yeah, I think there's the scientific importance of them as carbon sinks. They literally suck carbon out of the air, which is something we can't get enough of at this current moment. But then there's also, I guess, the more emotional importance of them. I've talked before about the experience of seeing a gutted forests. I'm from Mississippi, and we have forests everywhere, and like driving by a forest that's just been completely clear cut, it's just like emotionally devastating, I think. So I think that forests are what we think of when we think of a healthy planet, when we think of a healthy world. They're right up there with oceans, and there's just something that happens to your soul when you see a forest that's been harmed in like an industrial scale. So in that way, I think they're just like importance in terms of like grounding us as human beings and reminding us of who we are and our place in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, the relationship between human and forest is so strong.
Right, right. And it's part of us. We're part of it. And it makes no sense to separate them. And so it's just, when you see that wound, you feel wounded yourself because you are wounded.
Yeah, we are. So why do you think we're in it feels like we're in this sea change of a moment of possibility right now.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think we're in the right place at the right time for calling for climate justice?
Well, I think when you're calling for justice, there's no wrong place or wrong time, for one thing. But I also think that right now seems like a moment of galvanization.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that galvanization had to come from things getting really, really bad. I think the IPCC report of 2018 was a big thing that galvanized people to like, oh my God, this is real. This is scary. This is in my lifetime. And I hate that it had to get to that point before it was taken serious. But also, ever since then, we've seen things change just very dramatically, very, very fast. And I think that's what it's felt like in other movements for social change before. I think that like once upon a time, the abolition of slavery felt really impossible until all of a sudden it wasn't. You see the same thing in civil rights, in like memoirs of the civil rights movement. People felt like we're just pushing up boulder up a hill until all of a sudden you're not. All of a sudden things start to feel possible. A lot of the times when people ask me about climate action, they'll ask me like, do you think it's going to work? And my answer to that is like, do you think it's worth it? And if it's worth it, then you have no choice but to keep going. So I'm glad we kept pushing the boulder up the hill, and now it feels like we can only move faster.
We're at that moment of inflection too, of awareness. And
yeah,
it's also a struggle and an uphill battle, right?
Yeah. People have kind of thought that like, well, how do we introduce climate change to people? It's like one more thing that they have to worry about on top of all the other things that they're having to worry about. Except when you boil all of these things down to their cause, they're the same thing, right? Like it's white supremacy made manifest, white supremacist patriarchy made manifest, right? So in that sense, you're not worried about like climate change plus prisons plus voting rights plus all of these other things. You're worried about white supremacist patriarchy.
Yes.
It's one thing. Once I began to understand climate change that way, it didn't feel like this extra burden. It felt like, part of the thing that I've always been worried about, just another facet of it. And so like, once you like get down to that root, it's not many different stories. It's one story with many chapters.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It really does boil down to the centering of people who are in power, which are right now white and male largely, and have, created systems and institutions that perpetuate that power. And that's why we have a situation where you can have, rural communities across the South that are predominantly Black, but 99% of the land is owned by white people, and all the policies are designed to support the landowner's ability to exploit their forest for profits.
Exactly. I've actually been really encouraged to see more folks talking about the root causes of climate change.
What role do you think, or do you see Dogwood Alliance playing in this movement for climate justice right now?
I love that Dogwood loves on the South. Number one, I think that like real climate action, real climate justice is going to have to prioritize the South and listen to people in the South who have built movements and changed this country again and again. And I also love that just like the very simple aspect of like keeping trees in the ground. I mean, it seems so basic, but it's such a powerful solution to climate change of like, hey, why don't we just stop leaving? Why don't we just stop extracting things? How about that? So I think Dogwood has a really important role to play in that of just like keeping things natural, keeping things country.
I grew up in the South. You grew up in the South.
Right.
It's a beautiful place, and our forests are so incredible, and they're so beautiful, and they're as diverse as the culture of the South. And they've become a sacrifice zone for wood products. For biomass, for paper, for other wood products, and the pollution that goes along with that is another thing that a lot of people don't normally think about. Is you can't separate the logging and the production of wood products with the pollution that happens and the impacts that has on people's health. I mean, it's literally taking years off of people's lives.
It is. And they will tell you that it's putting food on their tables and giving them jobs. But I don't believe that a job in the South has to mean the destruction of the South. That just doesn't make any sort of sense to me.
No, it doesn't. And it can't moving forward, or we're all going to get extinct.
Right.
So if you could wave a magic wand, Mary, like right now, and change one thing that would kind of move the needle forward for the better, what would it be?
Make more people understand that this is a justice issue and not a science issue. Like if I could just get rid of that narrative, like then more people would be involved in it and see themselves in it. When you see it as just a science issue, it's like, well, just solve the problem. But like you need to solve the problem in a way that does not create more problems. And so I would want to reframe climate action as like the only climate action that is acceptable is climate justice.
And what we found in our work with forests is that when you really look at the science and then you hear from communities what they want and their solutions, it's one and the same. What qualities do you think Dogwood has as an organization that has helped us to be successful?
I thought Dogwood was this huge organization before I joined the board, and then I found out it's like a handful of people just really punching really high above its weight. And I love how hard Dogwood is working to dismantle white supremacy in a space that has generally not seen it as that much of a problem, meaning environmental spaces. Obviously, in rural and southern contexts, is definitely been seen as a problem for a very long time. And I just, again, love that it's regional. And I think that, there aren't very many organizations that work at that level.
Yeah, having a sense of place is so important to your passion, I think.
Yeah.
For sure. So, well, this year we're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary. What kind of impact do you think we're going to have in the next 25 years?
Oh my gosh, quarter century.
It is big. You never know when something starts, how long it's going to last, or, what it's going to look like 25 years later. And I don't know that we could have imagined where we landed now, but it's fun to think about where we could go at this moment.
I mean, at the rate Dogwood is going, I think all the trees are going to be back in the ground in 25 years. And they're going to be protected, and the air is going to be fresher, and we're going to have more protection from hurricanes and storm surges, and more indigenous land ownership and stewardship that the rest of us are learning from. And I think it's going to be a lot of healing to have taken place in the next 25 years.
You know, forests are such a big part of our ability to heal. There's so much information out there. I mean, we were all in COVID, like locked down and locked in, and being able to have access to trees and nature, whether it was just outdoors in a park in a city, or, you know, being able to go for a hike, fortunately enough where I live, you know, it was like a savior. It was like an anchor to a lifeline, if you will.
Yeah, it's a sanctuary.
Awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much. This was great. Have a good one.
All right. Take care, Danna.
You too.